Message. Okay, good. Well, okay, welcome to our Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee meeting for the Vermont Climate Council. Let's see, we have a quorum. We are recording this. So just make sure everybody understands that. Click the little OK button at the top of your screen if you want that message to go away. Marion has put the agenda in the chat, so thank you for doing that. But we're calling this our level set, our kickoff meeting, our level set meeting, and we have new members. And so we just want to start off with some introductions for those new members, especially, but just also for you all to introduce yourselves so they know who you are. And also, David and I are new to co-chairing. I picked up that responsibility a little bit over the fall when we were working on the speaker's letter response. But you know, David and I are new to this also. So I will start off. I'm Andrea Wright. I'm the Environmental Policy Manager at VTrans. And coming to this, like I said, new as the co-chair to this. I've been with the Agency of Transportation for quite a while, focusing 23 years on environmental topics, new to policy and planning where I'm focusing on resilience and climate mitigation type of things. And so why don't we do introductions sort of in that way? I thought we would do your name, how you come to this work, basically, where you're working, or if you know what other things relate to this subcommittee's work, and then just as an icebreaker, maybe tell us where your dream vacation spot would be. So I'll let David go first. And my dream vacation spot these days is Bali. My kids have been saying we should go to Bali, like it's just like around the corner or something, and we should just go to Bali. But that's sort of my aim these days. We'll see if that ever comes true. And so David, as the other co-chair, I'll open it up to you first.
Yeah, don't forget, Andrea, kids have magic carpets.
Yeah, I wish.
They can get anywhere.
Take me for a ride. I wish they did for a lot of other reasons too.
I am an appointee of the Speaker of the House. I served in the Vermont House for 28 years, up until 2016, I guess it was, and 2 years in the Senate, but that was back in the 1980s, for those of you who remember that era. I came to the Climate Council because of bioenergy. We did a lot of work. Andrea's already spoken about the letter in response to the speaker's questions, and she asked me to come and be part of devising answers to her questions. I'd go back to Belize to bonefish anytime.
That's great.
Magic carpet included.
Yeah, we all need one. So I'll just call on people and we'll go around the room in that way. So for our new members, Candace, thought I saw you on here. Yes, I do see you on there. Hi. Candace, could you kick us off for our new members, just your name and how you're coming to this work, and then, yeah, then your dream vacation spot.
Sure. My name is Candace Pearson. I work at Building Green in Brattleboro, Vermont, and we do a lot of work with climate adaptation, primarily with owners groups that have big portfolios of lots of buildings. So we work nationally, but with a little bit of work in Vermont. And we also do some electrification and energy efficiency and all of that kind of sustainability work around the built environment. And my dream vacation spot, I have a toddler trying to go down for a nap right now. So really just anywhere with a bed that's quiet would be a dream vacation.
Great. Thanks. And welcome. I'm glad to have you. And Scott McCormick, you can go next, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Scott McCormick, and I spent more than 40 years working in international environment and natural resources programs, managed mostly USAID and World Bank projects in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. Most recently, this was mostly through a consulting firm in Burlington, Vermont called Associates in Rural Development. Now it's Adaptation ARD. And recently, before I semi-retired, in 2018, I managed a program in East Africa called Prepared, which was 50% funded to look at climate change adaptation and resilience. And a number of the programs that we supported through local NGOs are potentially relevant to things that are happening in Vermont and in the US. I'm also, since 2018, I joined the City of Essex Junction Planning Commission. And a number of the topics that we've been discussing are relevant to some of the issues in the Climate Action Plan. And interestingly enough, some of the priorities are things that we were talking about most recently. I'm also on the Capital Projects Committee for the city. And we have been going through, since we're a new city, we've been going through a strategic action planning process for the next 5 years to determine what we want to focus on. And weatherization, renewables is one of the pillars under the strategic plan. So again, relevant to what we're doing in the city, sort of stimulated me to get involved. Also, I went to the municipal meeting that ANR sponsored last summer. And I think, Marion, you were the presenter for the vulnerability index. And she mentioned that they were taking applications in January and applied, and I'm honored to have been accepted and appointed to the subcommittee. Bali is not one of my vacation spots because I've already been there, and I just love going there. I think mine is probably the Aleutian chain in Alaska.
Oh, wow. Great. Yeah, great. Thanks for that overview of your experience. It's great to have, local to global experience. It's really awesome. And welcome to you. Dahlia, if you could go next, our youth member.
Yes, hi, hello everybody. My name is Dahlia and I am a junior at BBA. I am the leader of my school's environmental club, and I do a lot of kind of organizing events and making change in my community, but I'm eager to kind of do something a little bigger. So I'm very new to this kind of work, but I'm very excited and there's a lot for me to learn, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And dream spot.
And dream vacation. I would love to go to Iceland.
Great. Good. Thanks, Dahlia. Yeah, and it's great to have the youth perspective and the energy that you'll bring. I'm excited for that. And then our other new member is Dr. Mark Levine, if you want to introduce yourself, although probably most people have heard of you.
Yeah, hi. I don't think I have to go into great detail on my biography, but prior to becoming health commissioner for the past 7 years, I was an academic general internal medicine physician, clinical practice, did a lot of teaching, administered a lot of undergraduate and graduate medical education programs at the Medical Center and the College of Medicine. And needless to say, climate change intersects public health in a myriad of ways, which I also won't go into great detail at this moment with. My other charge is to talk about vacations. It's really hard to pick favorites, and I probably haven't been to enough places to be able to do that, but very partial to the part of the world where Australia, New Zealand, and Antarctica are. And we can go into reasons for all of those at another time. As I think you know, Andrea, I'm not going to be able to stay for the entire meeting because I have some competing conflicts, but happy to be here now.
Great. Thank you for making the time and for that introduction. And then I'll just go around and we can just go quickly. Marion, you're at the top left of my screen, so we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Marion Woles. I'm the Resilience and Adaptation Coordinator at the Agency of Natural Resources Climate Action Office. Serve as a member of the subcommittee and worked with the subcommittee as well back when the Climate Council had first started and writing the first climate action plan. Dream vacation spot, I think anywhere with a warm breeze and a hammock would be nice.
Great. Thank you. Ben, want to go next?
Oh, sure. Hello, I'm Ben Rose. I work at the Vermont Division of Emergency Management as the Recovery and Mitigation Section Chief. So that covers public assistance and hazard mitigation. So I'm very much in the weeds at the FEMA Joint Field Office right now of trying to get $600 million of public assistance and $90 million of hazard mitigation funding to flow to Vermont communities. In an earlier phase of my career, I served as the clerk of the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee at the end of the last century under Chairman David Dean. So that was a great experience. Bali was wonderful 40 plus years ago on the hippie trail. Mostly we vacation in Denver where our grandkids are, and I have a son-in-law from Argentina, so would like to go to Patagonia.
Nice. Me too. Thanks and good luck with getting all that money out. Michael?
Thanks, Andrea. Hi, everyone. I am Mike Burke. I lead field operations for Green Mountain Power. I've actually been doing that since 2009. So I've seen everything from Irene right up through to last week's hurricane force wind and wet snow event. I like to think everybody on here probably feels like they're kind of at the tip of the spear dealing with climate change. I certainly feel like that, trying to get our customers and our teams through these events that seems to be happening more and more frequently. And what I would say for my dream vacation, we're actually going to Yellowstone this summer, but
Yay.
I would be neglecting the fact that my 11-year-old daughter has absolutely fallen in love with Disney, and seeing her smile when we're there is pretty good too. So thanks.
Those are two very different places. Although sometimes you can feel like Yellowstone is Disney too. I lived and worked there for a little while. Alice, go ahead next, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alice Peel. I live in Waitsfield. Locally, I'm currently on the Waitsfield Planning Commission. Regionally, I'm working with Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, and I chair the new Regional Plan Committee. We have 5 very strong members on it and very interested in flood mitigation and climate action plan project to enhance the regional plan. I'm also, since we have Vermont Emergency Management here, leading a local group that's redoing, reviewing, and rewriting our local hazard mitigation program. My thing is, if anybody says it has to do with water, they say, give it to Alice or ask Alice. And that comes from my feeling that there are wetlands, especially in our Irisville downtown area, that need not just education on the function they serve, but also protection. And right now there is a municipal planning project starting in Waitsfield, and there is understandably tension between development and these wetlands. And I am the wetlands advocate for this project. Dahlia is absolutely correct. If you want to know anything about Iceland, ask me. I've been going there for 20 years. We have very good friends, and we have 2 horses there. And tragically, I have friends in Grindavik, which has been severely affected by the volcano.
Sounds
So
like you
that's
guys
me.
can have something to talk about then, you and Dahlia. That's great. Allie, go ahead next, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Webster. I do energy planning work for the Regional Planning Commission up here in the Northeast Kingdom, so Orleans, Essex, and Caledonia counties. And I am also very involved in our local energy committee and help run the Northeast Kingdom's energy committee network, which also includes a lot of partners with distribution utilities and Efficiency Vermont and other weatherization partners as well. So very interested in sort of building community and local resilience with renewables, but also big push for comprehensive weatherization as a major way of increasing health and resilience for increasing extreme weather events. And ideal vacation spot would be somewhere warm with a beach.
Nice. Let's see, Otis, I think you're next on my screen.
Hi, yes, I'm Otis Elms Monroe. I'm on Andrea's team, Environmental Policy and Sustainability over at VTrans. I'm staff support here on this committee. I've been with VTrans in that position since July. My primary role is sort of seeing through our various climate adaptation programs and getting those off the ground and sort of managing the various funding sources and that kind of thing. In my past life, I was an archaeologist, which took me back and forth to Greece fairly often, but I never made it across the water to Turkey, and everyone who went there loved it. So that's always been on my list as a place I'd love to get to sometime. So
Nice. Thank you. Sue?
Took me a second, sorry. I'm Sue Plant, and I work for Vermont Emergency Management as the administrative assistant, and I'll be providing clerical support for this group. And my dream vacation would probably be Hawaii. It just looks beautiful.
It does. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, and thank you for that, helping us out with that. It's super helpful. And then Eric?
Hi, good afternoon. Eric Foran, Director of Vermont Emergency Management, as a new member there, thanks for having me. And my dream vacation at this point with 3 teenagers is more about time than location. Just trying to find a spot in their calendars where we could all get away is a lot harder than it used to be.
I bet. Yeah, I know I better get to Bali before they hit that stage then. Caroline, round out VEM.
Hi, sorry, I'm having some connection issues, so hopefully you can hear me. I'm Caroline Paskey. I'm State Hazard Mitigation Planner over at Vermont Emergency Management, and I'm the point person on the State Hazard Mitigation Plan and local hazard mitigation plans. So I provide technical assistance on hazard mitigation planning and review and FEMA approve the local hazard mitigation plans. My other hat is I'm recently on the Shoreham Planning Commission, so great to see other Planning Commission members here. And my dream vacation, everyone had really great ideas, but I most related to what Candace said about finding a place where a toddler would sleep. And that sounds really great right now. Maybe a beach would be nice too.
Sleeping on the beach. It's been done before.
Yeah.
Thanks, Caroline. Jared.
Hi everyone, Jared Ulmer. I manage the Climate and Health Program at the Vermont Department of Health. I am staff support on this subcommittee. I'm just starting as staff support, having swapped with my colleague David Grass, who was formerly staff support in this committee. I was formerly on the Science and Data Subcommittee, and we've switched roles. I have been active in this subcommittee to some extent, though, through the climate municipal climate toolkit task group that I've been supporting over the last couple of years. And dream vacation spot, maybe not super ambitious, but my almost 4-year-old is really getting into camping, and as am I. So our dreams are just going to great camp spots. And Acadia National Park is one of my favorites. So I'll say that's my pragmatic dream for the near future.
And Anne.
Hi, Anne Margolis, Deputy Planning Director at the Vermont Department of Public Service. Anything in policy, regulatory, rate making, realm. I'm probably working on it if it has to do with energy. That includes quite a bit on sort of transmission, distribution systems. I authored the couple storage reports that the department put out in 2017 and 2019. So I guess like Alice, if something storage related comes across to the department, it usually finds its way to my desk. And that's I think a main reason I ended up being staff support on this subcommittee, where I've been since its inception. And I moonlight as an alternate on the District 3 Act 250 Environmental Commission, and I'm on my Town of Corinth's Planning Commission. So on that side of things too. And my dream vacation, I think, I've never been to continental Europe, so I would take anywhere that had a beach. So much the better.
Great. And Bronwyn. I know you're traveling, so it's hard to get on. Yeah, see, there you are.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I apologize. I clearly missed the best part of the meeting, hearing about everybody's vacations. I caught a couple of them. Sounds amazing. Yeah, apologies for being late. My name is Bronwyn Cook. I am in the Department of Housing and Community Development in a little division called Community Planning and Revitalization. You're probably familiar with the state's designation programs. That's one of the programs that we run, but we do a little dabbling / meddling in a little bit of everything that has to do with all things community building, community infrastructure. We do a lot around placemaking, and we've started to kind of dip our toes into climate and energy and what that means for Vermont housing growth, for community development, community growth, infrastructure growth, et cetera. One of the larger programs that I'm working on right now is around electric vehicle infrastructure. So, dream vacation. I feel like right about now I would take just about anything, but the last like real big picture, don't know where this came from, Google search that I did was around some mountains in Slovakia. No idea where it came from, but they look wonderful. And I guess that's probably where I would go if I had a solid 2 months to do it.
Oh, nice. Sounds like a good one. Okay, and I think so that rounds out our official membership for the people that are on. I think, Marion, if I did see in the chat that you put a link to our official roster that lists voting members and then staff support members as well. So if you kind of, I should have probably done it in that order, but if you want to look at that list just to figure out where people sit in that space, then take a look at that. And then I do see Alex, you are on too, so I'll provide the opportunity if you want to introduce yourself, but you don't have to come off if you don't want to. Okay, I will move on then. So let's see, I have 1,000 tabs open. So just quickly, I just wanted to make sure that we all introduced ourselves. We have new members, so I'm glad we did that. It took a little longer than I knew it would take a little longer than I put on the agenda, so that's fine. We're going to spend a few minutes, 15 so minutes, going over some of the relevant documents that sort of set our baseline from where we're starting from as we embark on the next year or so of work, or a little less than a year. There's a subcommittee guidance document that we'll go through is it from the Climate Action Office, Marion, that put that together, or no, it was through the Climate Council. Yeah, the council put that together. So just kind of laying out, our action for the next iteration of the Climate Action Plan. So we'll go through that a little bit, and then we'll spend some time doing a little bit of a brainstorm on how we want to begin to develop our work plan for that end goal of providing recommendations for the next Climate Action Plan in July of 2025. We'll take some public comment and then just a few minutes to wrap up and figure out what we need to do next. Is there any comments on the agenda? Anything we should be thinking of that's not there, or something you definitely don't want to talk about for some reason? Okay, I think we're good there then. On our next order of business is to approve the December 8th meeting. That was the last time we met. So for those people that were involved, if you had a few minutes, or if you need to take a minute, you can do that and review those minutes now. Let's just take a minute and go over it. They're pretty short, but they have not yet been approved. We are beyond submitting those recommendations to the Vermont Climate Council, so hopefully we're all good. But if there's any clarification that needs to be done on those, speak up, or if we're all good with approving those, then give me some indication of that. Anybody oppose approving them? Let's go that route. Okay, and we'll consider those approved. And then, okay, so yeah, well, Marion is going to graciously lead us through the next 15 minutes. Those documents that we provided, thinking those were the most relevant. There's a lot of information in those documents, but thinking those are the most relevant for where we start our work. So I'll turn it over to you, Marion.
Great. I'll share my screen here. So for folks, either new subcommittee members or folks who've been around for a while, we thought, as this is a level set meeting and it's the first time we've met in a while, that it would be helpful to walk through some of the documents that the subcommittee has been involved in pulling together, starting with the climate action plan and then moving through some of the more recent work the subcommittee has done since the passage of the climate action plan. I'm not going to go through every document in excessive detail. I think I'll go through high level, walk you through what are the most important components and sort of the genesis for some of those documents that the subcommittee has worked on since the sort of formation of the Climate Council, and then encourage folks to dig into these in more detail. Again, especially for new members, it will be a good starting place for you all to get a sense of what the subcommittee has focused on, where it hasn't focused, and could inform our later conversation on where the work of the subcommittee will focus, or where you would like it to focus for the update to the climate action plan that's due in 2025. So I'm just showing the agenda here. I'll walk through these documents that are linked. There are, of course, other relevant documents that are linked on the climatechange.vermont.gov website that are related to this subcommittee. I believe most new members have or will soon participate in the subcommittee onboarding training with Sophie Veltrop, who's the communications and community engagement coordinator with the Climate Action Office. And she, I believe, walks you all through sort of the use of the website and the resources table and how to find documents through that. So hopefully you can take a look in more detail at some of those documents there. But again, Andrea listed these out as sort of being the primary places to start to level set. So I'll walk through these at a high level. Again, happy to answer questions if folks have reviewed them, or encourage you all to review them as we move forward in our work. So the first is actually not linked on the documents here. I can link this on the calendar agenda for folks to take a look at it, but I just wanted to share, there is a Climate Council and subcommittee member onboarding guide that, again, I believe has been shared if you all participated in the onboarding training. This walks you all through sort of your role as a subcommittee member and or a counselor, some of the more administrative and logistical components, but it also includes high-level descriptions of the charges of the 5 subcommittees of the Climate Council. And so I just pulled up here the 2-sentence charge of the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee that comes from the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is the law that established the Climate Council and the subcommittee that you sit on. And so this, you'll see the description, it really is focused on, and the subcommittee's work is focused on the pressures that climate change will place on various sectors in Vermont: transportation, electricity, housing, emergency services, communications infrastructure. And the subcommittee's charged with paying particular attention for how those challenges will be faced and addressed in rural communities across the state. The subcommittee is also charged with assessing how individual and community preparedness impacts resilience to climate change. So just wanted to share this again. I'll put the link in the chat, as this isn't linked on the on the website currently, or sorry, on the it is on the website, but it's not on the event page for this meeting. But wanted to have us all touch base on sort of the broad level charge to this subcommittee as we walk through some of the other work. Any questions on that before I move to the next document? Okay. Sorry, I'm going to move a little quickly just so we have time to get into our work planning discussion. But again, want to touch base with you all about what these documents are and how they're relevant to your work. So the next that I'm going to pull up here is the Climate Action Plan that was adopted by the Vermont Climate Council on December 1st of 2021. I've jumped down to, I know I have to scroll back up, sorry, to the section relevant to or really drafted by the Rural Resilience and Adaptation Subcommittee related to, again, the charge that focus on the pressures that climate change will place on particular sectors and how communities, particularly rural communities, can be supported in building resilience to climate change impacts. So this section of the Climate Action Plan, which is a big document, if you haven't taken a look at it, it's 274 pages. There are 5 sections with pathways, strategies, and actions that are related to broadly the focus of the Climate Council, and then more specifically the charges of the subcommittees. Relevant to the work of this particular subcommittee, which again is important to sort of understand as we talk about where updates and changes will be needed for the next Climate Action Plan. This starts on, I think it's, the introduction I think starts on page 137 or 8. It's listed in the agenda of the Climate Action Plan. And I'm starting here on the first pathway because the majority of the recommendations in the Climate Action Plan are broken out in the structure of pathways, strategies, and action. So pathways are sort of those high-level objective statements. Strategies are really the what are we trying to get to, what's sort of the work we're trying to support, and the actions are the steps that the subcommittee determined were needed to meet those strategies. The Rural Resilience Subcommittee was really focused on the work spread across 5 pathways, which you'll see. I'm not going to scroll through because it gets a little jumpy on my screen here, but there are 5 pathways listed in this particular section of the Climate Action Plan. The first you see on the screen here is a focus on increasing capacity for climate resilience planning and addressing inequities of under-resourced communities. And there are a handful of strategies and actions listed under this particular pathway related to that real focus on capacity for rural communities to build resilience. The second pathway that the subcommittee was focused on is proactively and strategically invest to enhance resilience in transportation, communications, water, wastewater, and energy infrastructure. So this pathway was really focused on how do we build resilience in our largest infrastructure sectors and ensure that the stakeholders that are involved in that work are appropriately resourced and have the tools needed to do so. The third pathway was focused on the reduction of municipal, school district, residential, university, and hospital fossil fuel use through equitable best practices that address the unique challenges of rural communities. While the primary focus of this subcommittee, hence its name, is really on building resilience to climate change, a lot of that does come through the adoption of electrification and weatherization best practices. And there's also a specific charge and focus for the subcommittee to really think about how actions and strategies that transition our communities off of fossil fuel use will particularly impact rural communities. Hence the sort of focus on pathway 3 for this subcommittee on how reduction of fossil fuel use in rural communities can be done in an equitable way. The fourth pathway is focused on land use policies and ensuring that current and future land use development will be adaptive and resilient to climate change impacts. And the fifth pathway—
I don't think your screen is advancing.
Sorry, I wasn't actually going through them because it gets a little jumpy, but can do that. It's just, there's a lot of pages here, so I'm not sure if folks are actually going to be reading it as we go through. Once I stop sharing, I can put all the pathways in the chat so folks can kind of read through those if that's helpful. So then the fifth pathway, again, there are 5 pathways that this subcommittee was really focused on developing actions for as the Climate Action Plan was being drafted. And the fifth one is focused on ensuring that people have access to safe, accessible, energy efficient, and affordable housing. So really a focus on housing, how we support the growth of housing and how we ensure that that housing is accessible and affordable to all Vermonters and also energy efficient and adapted to climate change. So the other thing I'll just point out for if you're perusing the climate action plan and want to really dig into the action and strategy detail under those 5 pathways is the way that the climate action plan was drafted with work from all of the subcommittees, not just rural resilience, is that strategies are listed under the pathway with actions below them. And then there's an assessment based on a set of criteria. In the case of rural resilience, that assessment was done at the strategy level, but you'll see tables in the climate action plan that really reflect the assessment of those strategies across 5 criteria. And those 5 criteria are impact. So what is the impact of that particular strategy on Vermonters, on Vermont communities? Where are there equity concerns or equity considerations that should be taken into consideration as that particular strategy and the actions included are being implemented? What is the cost effectiveness of that particular strategy? What are the particular co-benefits? And then is that strategy and the actions included technically feasible? And this weighing of criteria was done for all of the strategies and actions within the climate action plan and was used to prioritize what actually got included in the climate action plan. So again, sorry, Ben, I wasn't scrolling through all of them here. It's a lot of pages to go through, but I'll put all of the pathway language in the chat and then encourage folks to go take a look at this particular section. And then the other thing I'll say is Andrea linked in the agenda also the pathways for building resilience and adaptation in natural communities or working in natural communities. That's really the focus of the rural resilience, or sorry, the agriculture and ecosystem subcommittee, but does have a lot of crossover when it comes to land use and really nature-based solutions supporting our built environment and rural communities. So there is a lot of crossover work between our subcommittee and the agriculture and ecosystem subcommittee, but their work was focused on a different section of the climate action plan. All right, moving right along in the documents that are linked in your agenda. This is a much easier way to see those pathways, strategies, and actions that are outlined in the climate action plan. This is an appendix of those pathways, strategies, and actions. Each of the subcommittees that was drafting this has a sort of Excel-based appendix that's included to the climate action plan, and you can see much more easily here without sort of all of the detail on the impact and criteria statements, what was listed and included. I think the few things to draw your attention to, pathways are listed in this sort of pale pink color here. Pathways are listed in the green, strategies are in the pale pink, and the actions are listed below in the white boxes. You'll see the overall priority ranking, which if folks have questions about this, I'm happy to share more information about how the priority rankings were achieved. But the subcommittees were instructed to do a particular ranking exercise with that criteria that's in those tables that's outlined in the climate action plan I just showed you. Anything that resulted as high was included in the climate action plan, and then the subcommittee was given jurisdiction to decide if they wanted to also include any medium or low priority actions in it as well. You'll see here, the subcommittee opted to just keep in this table any medium or low actions, even if they weren't included in the text of the climate action plan, as sort of future reference for future subcommittee and council work. So again, this is linked in your agenda. It's also linked on our website as an appendix to the climate action plan and is sort of a more concise place to see all of the pathways, strategies, and actions that the subcommittee worked on. So that's rounding out the sort of key documentation for the drafting of the climate action plan. Again, the subcommittees, all 5 of them worked on actions that were then brought to the Climate Council, revised, and then drafted into the final climate action plan, which was adopted, as I said, on December 1st of 2021. Following that, the subcommittee didn't meet for a while, but did focus in late 2022 on developing budget recommendations to then share with the Vermont legislature per a request from the legislature asking what the council thought would be helpful to include from the climate action plan for budget recommendations. So this document that is, again, linked in your agenda is a memo that includes a series of actions that each of the 5 subcommittees recommended be included in the FY24 budget. So the subcommittee, this Rural Resilience Subcommittee met and discussed and pulled forward a series of actions from the climate action plan to include in the budget recommendations that was then shared with the Vermont legislature. The legislature and the council really asked that the subcommittee prioritize these recommendations. So you'll see it's for the rural resilience table, which is listed at the end of this memo. It's a pretty short list here. There's a focus on implementation for technical assistance and education around funding for RPCs and local municipalities to support resilience. There's a focus on infrastructure funding. And there is a focus on water and wastewater infrastructure, technical assistance, and education. So again, there was a lot of deliberation and there are documents of course, all the previous meetings are recorded for how the subcommittee came to this prioritization, but wanted to share this as some of the work that the subcommittee and then ultimately the council have been involved in since the climate action plan was adopted in end of 2021. And then the last thing I'll share with you, which Andrea and David have referenced in their introductions, is more recent work that the subcommittee has been involved in. And this relates to, if you hear folks reference the letter from the Speaker of the House sent a letter to the Vermont Climate Council following the flooding that Vermont experienced in July of last year, asking the council to share a series of recommendations from the climate action plan that could be applied and worked into particular bills in this legislative session that would really help Vermont increase its resilience to climate change. That request came to the Vermont Climate Council. The Climate Council directed the Rural Resilience Adaptation Subcommittee to develop a response to that request from the Speaker. And so there were a series of meetings and work done last year to develop a response and sort of go through the actions in the climate action plan and pull out a series that the council then adopted and sent back in a response to the letter to the Speaker. So again, this is also linked online. You can read through the letter that was drafted with a handful of folks from the subcommittee. The subcommittee met a few times to weigh which actions we wanted to include in the recommendations. These were actions taken directly from the climate action plan. I think we thought that we weren't given enough time to sort of write new actions, but wanted to pull from the climate action plan that had been adopted by the council. And the recommendations broadly were grouped by 4 categories that the Speaker had requested the council focus on. The first was community, business, and residential resources for expediting adaptation. The second was for types of supports that communities, businesses, and people need in order to help them make decisions about which property to defend and how to assist Vermonters in leaving endangered property. And then the last 2 were related to strategies that either should be prioritized for state and federal funding, and then any additional state capacity that might be necessary. And so again, similar to that request of budget recommendations to include in the FY24 budget, the subcommittee worked and prioritized a set of, I believe there's 5 in here, 5 actions that come from the climate action plan that were shared in this memo back with the council to then be shared back per the request from the Speaker. So that's sort of the most recent work that the subcommittee has been focused on. Again, David and Andrea were, I don't know if you were officially co-chairs, but we're on the subcommittee when that work was happening, and highlight some of the work that's happened sort of in the interim from the adoption of the last climate action plan to this one. So with that, I'll stop sharing. I know it's sort of a crash course into some of this relevant documentation, but encourage folks to dig into it in more detail. Reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them, or know others are as well. Hope that sort of helps us get to a place where we can level set and start to talk about updates to the next climate action plan.
Phew, thanks, Marion. That was a lot, a lot to cover, years of work in 15 minutes or so. So I think one thing also to mention about the rural resilience and adaptation, the matrix that Marion shared, is that there's a bunch of cross-cutting measures or actions. I'm not exactly sure which category they fall under. And so those definitely something to take a look at and think about how we want to incorporate that into the work that we do over the next 8 or 9 months, and how we want to hear from others and coordinate with others on those types of things. So something to think about. Any questions though for Marion or for anyone else who was involved in that, putting together those documents? Go ahead, Alice.
Ooh, start video. Okay, there I am. I've been going through the very large climate action plan and the 2 sections that were recommended for us to review. And there seems to be a call for quite a bit of funding throughout the plan. And I'm wondering how much of this funding is in front of the legislature now. Has anything been approved, or is this for the next legislative session? It's quite a bit of money, but I agree, especially in areas of education, which I hope this committee really kind of maybe helps me in understanding what's going to be the best approach and the most effective way to communicate to local residents the need for this. An upfront lump sum of money, I think, is appropriate in that the goal would be to mitigate the outlay of money through flooding and disaster mitigation. So I'm just wondering how much is floating around the legislature now.
I'm going to suggest that maybe we don't actually go through, we don't really have time to get into that today, but something I think we're going to have to get into certainly as we move into this work and understand that better. I think there's several other documents out around. One of them is mentioned in the guidance document that we'll go through in a few minutes. It's the progress report for the climate action plan. I believe that lists out funding in that table too. It's still being finalized, so that'll be shared out in the next couple of weeks. But I think you're spot on that we will need to understand sort of where things are right now. And then also there's an interagency advisory board to the Climate Action Office, and part of that work, recent work, was to develop a table of actions or programs that state agencies have and the funding that went to them. I believe it was for state fiscal year 24. So it's a climate spending summary. So that's something we can also look at. So thanks for that. And then Scott.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Marion, for the presentation. Also, thank you for sharing all the documentation prior to the meeting. I obviously have a lot to catch up on, and to a certain extent, it's a little bit overwhelming. I have lots of questions, but I'm going to focus on one, which is a detail-oriented question. I did have a chance to look at the video from the December 8th meeting, and there's a chart that was prepared during that meeting that seemed to be related to the speaker's letter. And it's coded green, blue, and orange in the matrix. And it seems to be a subset of the priorities from the Vermont Climate Council letter to the speaker. Can you clarify the difference between those 2 charts? You know what ones I'm talking about?
Not what was presented.
If I remember correctly, those were iterations, sequential iterations leading up to the recommendations that made it to the speaker's letter.
Okay.
I don't think that any of the other charts or any of the other action steps or anything else was adopted by the committee. It was specifically, we winnowed down. It was, as I say, a couple of iterations of what are your top priorities and why are they your priorities? And then we would talk about that. And eventually it led to those items that are in the speaker's letter.
Okay, so the speaker's letter is the one that are the priorities right now for the subcommittee or for the council,
They're not priorities for the council. They are recommendations for legislative action to carry out the recommended steps that are part of the climate plan.
Okay.
The speaker asked us, what are the best, quickest, most effective steps we can take right now?
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add to that, that those actions that we put in the letter were ones that we saw were not, didn't have an action. They hadn't been advancing yet. And so that's sort of how we chose to put forth the recommendation for priorities, to say we reviewed kind of all the actions and a lot of what is going on in the state already. And then we said these could use some legislative action because they are not advancing right now. And so that's what we put forth in that. Okay, I feel like we should move on. So what is next? The guidance document. I'll try to go through that pretty quickly. See if I can figure out how to share my screen on it. It should all go away. Okay. Let me just work with this. So yeah, there's another document, yet another document linked into the agenda. It's a guidance document that the steering committee and the climate council has been working on over the last couple of months to help guide subcommittees in how to sort of organize around and give some guidelines and expectations for subcommittees as we do our work towards the next iteration of the climate action plan that's due in July. So I have just kind of broken that down into a few slides here. You know, it's the subcommittees that are going to.
I'm sorry, just so there's no confusion, July 2025.
What did I say?
You just said July.
Oh, 2025. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, not 2030, 2025. It's coming right up. So this the guidance document sort of just starts off with an overview. The subcommittees are really the primary entities responsible for developing the recommendations that will go into the update of the climate action plan. You see the different committees listed there. There's those subcommittees that are going to come up with the recommendations, and then there's subcommittees like Just Transition and Science and Data that will help support those subcommittees in that and provide you know, just general support in many different ways that will help us inform what our recommendations are. And then I mentioned the cross-cutting issues. There are things like workforce and education and outreach that are really cut across all the different subcommittees' works. And so there's going to be a need to coordinate on those as well. I don't know how to change my screen. Here we go. So this is the expected process steps that they laid out. First, reviewing that progress report that should come out soon. I think we're expecting that in the next week or two. And it will kind of tell us where we are with what was laid out in the initial climate action plan. And that will help us, again, sort of level set and figure out what we need to do. And then it's recommended that we, you know, hear from others and get figure out what information we need to inform our recommendations, sort of figuring out where we think we need to be, where we are, and then figuring out what that gap is and figuring out what's the data that we need to support future recommendations, who do we need to hear from, how do we communicate, and that will all come to fruition through how we organize around a work plan is at least my vision for that, and I think others as well. So one of the things that I think is important and maybe wasn't as prevalent in the initial action plan is to really narrow down on a prioritized list of actions. And so that's something that we're going to really want to keep in mind in how we, if you look through the matrix, you'll see quite a few that are high and medium actions, and that's a lot to take on. And so we're going to just have to figure out as a subcommittee how we want to look at what was provided for in the initial climate action plan and decide what stays, what leaves, what more needs to be added as we move through our work, and then really aim to prioritize those actions so that we can make sure that the most important things do get attention they need. So they gave a drafting timeline, just so we sort of know where we stand and what the expectations are around that. So here we are in April. All the subcommittees are sort of regrouping at this point to start towards this work. May through August, this is where we will sort of look at where we're at and determine what additional strategies and actions, sort of identifying those gaps. There may be things that we feel like the initial climate action plan really missed the mark on, and that we need to come up with some specific actions to address that. So that's sort of in that time frame, we'll be doing monthly meetings. September, December is really when we're going to have to start drafting our recommendations. And we will, I should mention also in August, we're on the hook for giving an update to the Climate Council at that point to let them know how we're doing as a subcommittee and, just a general update. So that's something we'll need to be aiming for towards the end of August. And then September to December, again, when we're really putting pen to paper and drafting the recommendations and the strategies and actions that go into that. The goal is to have that to the Climate Council by December, by the end of the year, so that they can then take it and go through all of it, consolidate it into one document and get it ready to go out for a public engagement process. And then we'll come back. During that time, the subcommittees will have less work to do. It will really be the Climate Council that's working on that with the steering committee. And then we'll be called back to action, some of us in some capacity at least, in the April to June timeframe for public engagement on what has been put forth in this new draft. Let's see. Oh, and this is just sort of a little bit more detail on that and some expectations for how much time and the level of effort that we will likely need to be putting in. And so again, that April through August timeframe where we're kind of gathering information and hearing from different people and understanding what needs we have in formulating a new plan. April through August is probably going to be monthly meetings. There might be some task groups that are breaking off and doing some work with that, but that's sort of the level of effort expectation during that time frame. Again, September, December, it picking up and maybe needing to meet more regularly. Certainly, I would think task groups and working on certain items and then bringing it back to the subcommittee to sort of go through and provide input on. January through June, I just described how we would be involved in that effort. So I was going to open it up to questions, and I see Candace you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah, and you might have said this and I just didn't catch it, but a lot of this is around adjusting the prioritized strategies and actions. Does that mean that the pathways will stay consistent between the two climate action plans, or are those also adjusted based on the new prioritized actions and strategies?
I think it's all open for subcommittee discretion, really. And I think that's a conversation that we'll have to have and figure out. And anybody else, if we've been plugged into steering committee or other conversations that can inform a response on this, then definitely weigh in. But I do think it's all open. There's nothing in the guidance that says you're to stay away from certain levels. But I think we're going to have to sort of weigh what those high level priorities are for us and how they fit into the existing categories. If they need to be twisted or modified in some way, then we can do that. And I think we're just going to have to weigh that with how much time we have and the way that we deliver the message most clearly and consistently, maybe. So yeah, I don't think anything's prohibited. Any other questions on that guidance?
I think that the committee needs to at least incorporate a level of respect for the work that has gone before. That does not mean that you cannot change it. I was involved with a change in a decision or that had been made by a subcommittee. But it will be presented as a question to the Climate Council. Option A or option B. And the Climate Council will actually end up making that final choice based on my experience, limited albeit, but based on my experience. So I think that as we are discussing amongst ourselves, we need to rely on staff and assign administration people in terms of what has already been established as policy and whether or not the Climate Council is likely to give up on it and change, and to factor that as one of the elements in our calculus.
Any other input on that? Right, so we are definitely behind on the agenda, and I want to have some time for brainstorming. And so I'll move in. This is just a proposed work plan outline. I really don't want to direct any of this. I don't see that as my role as co-chair. I really want to try to facilitate what you all as a subcommittee want to have, and I certainly will weigh in on that, but I'm just putting this out there as a proposal for how we might organize our work, and we can certainly decide if those are the right things that we want to talk about at each of the meetings, or what we need. Are those the right milestones, so to speak? And then I would imagine, I will put it out there for agreement, but I feel like I would like to have some sort of organized work plan or framework that we can refer back to make sure we sort of know where we're at, and if we feel like we're on target with that work plan as we go through, you know, especially the first part of the monthly meetings from May through August, to kind of make sure that we're getting the information and having the right people come to our subcommittee meetings, or reviewing the right information and sharing the right information so that we can make good decisions when we get down to the details through September through December. So I think it's important to have, but I'm willing to hear others' thoughts on that, or whether or not we want to have a break-off group that takes this, modifies it, fleshes it out, and shares it back to the group in May. Is that something that seems productive and valuable?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take some thoughts on that. Scott, go ahead.
This is a procedural question. In the past, if tasks had to be accomplished between meetings, how did you do that? Did members of the subcommittee work together as task forces, or was that staff support? How did that work, and how would you see it working in the future?
Yeah, there were little mini groups, volunteers who felt that they had some time. Again, going back to my experience, felt that they had some time to actually rewrite something and bring it forward so that it could go through the process. But that's only one model. That was the one that was used in my experience.
Yep, and I wasn't part of the rural resilience subcommittees, and each subcommittee operates a little differently. So I don't know if those who were involved in the initial writing, if that's sort of the way it went, that between meetings, a few people with capacity and passion for a particular topic or expertise in a certain area would break off, work together in between meetings, and then bring something back to the subcommittee to deliberate on. Yeah. Great, thanks. Marion, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all accurate. I think there's no dedicated staff support to the subcommittee, so it's really up to volunteers of members of the subcommittee or the state staff support who are dedicating some time to this work to volunteer. But I will just note that this is a public body, and so if any work needs to be done in the interim, if we're going to be doing it in sort of small groups, it needs to be less than a quorum of the subcommittee. Otherwise, we're having a public meeting.
Yeah, thanks for that.
So
Alex?
less than 8 people. Less than 8 people.
Less than 8 members, but there are, again, staff support who could join. So the meeting could be more than 8, but it can't be 8 members of the subcommittee. That's correct.
Go ahead, Alex.
Right. I'm familiar with that meeting numbers. I just want to add that I think this is a really good approach. When I was chair of our planning commission in Waitsfield, I introduced the concept of task groups and subcommittees of subcommittees. And it also drew in to those committees appropriate stakeholders or members, bringing on non-planning commission members with the expertise we needed. What it did was made us much more efficient in how we worked. And we wound up being able to take 3 major projects that were sitting there waffling and not moving forward. We got 3 of them done within a year. And they weren't easy projects. What I also guided is that any work or recommendations or decisions by the task force had to be voted on by the main planning commission committee. So I really support this idea of who has the time and the desire to participate in particular tasks, that's how we work here. For those reasons, can you just explain I think I had at the initial gaps analysis, what we're looking at in there?
Yeah, in my mind, that means kind of looking at where we're at with the existing documents that we went over this morning, as well as the progress report, and more probably the existing documents, sort of that baseline of information where we're starting and understanding. Maybe some member of the subcommittee says, this doesn't really even address our health in the way that I think it should, or it doesn't address this. So that's a gap. And so then we would want to try to include a recommendation in that space. That's what I mean by gaps analysis.
I got you. Thank you.
Can you explain what you mean by level set?
The level set for me is just sort of what we're doing today and asking all of us to sort of regroup and reform our minds on where we are as a group with the recommendations that were in the initial climate action plan and sort of just the major milestones that have happened for our subcommittee through time since the initial climate action plan. And so that's why we provided the documents that we did. I think the progress report will also help with that. It's just like, okay, this is the foundation from where we're starting our work. That's the level set in my mind. Marianne, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick, as folks are talking about task groups and performing work outside of the subcommittee, do just want to note and be transparent that appointed members of the council and of the subcommittee who are not state staff are eligible to receive per diem. Again, this should have been covered in your subcommittee onboarding. You are eligible to receive $50 per meeting for bodies on which you are an appointed member. However, if you're meeting as a task group or doing work outside of meetings, that rate has to be prorated to an hourly amount, which is $6.25 an hour. So just want to note that if there are task groups or sort of unofficial groups formed outside of official subcommittee meetings, you cannot receive the full $50 per diem. And that's something that came up in the last climate action plan, sort of check in on the progress after the fact that, if you're doing a lot of work outside of the meetings, you don't receive the full rate and can be an issue of equity. So I think just keep that in mind as you think about how much work takes place in and outside of meetings.
Thank you. So we're going through this meeting pretty the time is flying by. And I just wanted to spend at least 10 minutes. I'd rather spend more time sort of brainstorming where we need to go. And I don't think I'm gonna be able to take notes on this, but come back. Okay, so I just want to spend some time sort of helping us organize for the next couple of meetings at least of what we think we need right now as we develop a work plan. I would hope that we pretty much by May can say we have a draft work plan and let's talk about that at our next meeting. Is there information that we need to form that work plan, or even thinking a little bit beyond that? Is there something that you need, some information you would like to hear in May that will help us decide how we move forward? Ben, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. I have a thought about where we sort of start our next meeting. Obviously, the big thing that has changed since a lot of those documents were produced has been that we had the worst flood since 1927. When I look at the matrix of our strategies and actions, it holds up remarkably well. A lot of the things we said are were high priority. For example, around establishing permanent statewide funding and technical support for climate resilience planning and project implementation is more urgent now. And it's being worked on at the State House. We didn't get to answer Alice's question, but in order to spend $90 million of hazard mitigation federal funding, the legislature and the administration are working to come up with a non-federal match fund up to $36 million, which creates this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do massive floodplain restoration projects if we can get ourselves aligned to do them. But there are a few of the overall priority rankings that I think we do want to reflect on and revise based on the flooding. For example, 2E, establish a state-level individual assistance program to provide financial assistance to uninsured or underinsured households impacted by disasters. The overall priority ranking was low. Ask people in Barry City today, the priority is high. Likewise, that word underinsured points to an elephant in the room, which is that the National Flood Insurance Program doesn't work, and the majority of flood vulnerable Vermonters do not have flood insurance. So that I would start by looking at how our priorities have been informed by what has happened since the last time.
Okay, that's helpful. I think I'm thinking that we should definitely also spend some time going over the progress report that can sort of help inform that, and we can flesh that out to get to what Alice spoke about earlier and the funding. I see 3 hands up, but I'm just going to say something first. I think it would be interesting to hear about other plans of the state that are addressing resilience, like the state hazard mitigation plan. If we could get an update on that, there's a new plan out, so get an update on that. We have the resilience implementation strategy. I don't know that we need to talk about that in our May meeting. If maybe we can spend some time, but there's also 2 sessions going on, a kickoff for that. So that's an opportunity for us to try to attend that to get a better idea of what is happening with that strategy and just sort of how all of that work can be complementary and not too redundant, or how they can just complement each other. I guess I'll just leave it at that. But I don't know who had their hand up first because there's not a 1, 2, and 3. So Marion, go ahead.
Well, I have to jump to another meeting. I'm really sorry. So I'm going to go really quick. I think in terms of presentation and information, I agree. I was going to mention getting an update on the state hazard mitigation plan. And I think either together with that or as the science and data subcommittee is really the subcommittee charged with ensuring that we as other subcommittees have the relevant data and information to help us inform how we craft actions. I think asking them to coordinate either with Dr. Dupigny-Giroux or someone else a presentation on like climate change impacts to Vermont, what we're seeing in terms of risk and vulnerability, in terms of precipitation and drought and high heat and sort of the impacts, so that we have a sense of really where are we seeing an increase and potential for more impacts or more effects of climate change, and how that should then inform, you know, a look at our progress report and a potential reprioritization of action. So I think that should be a request we send officially to the Science and Data Subcommittee. I'm not sure how best to do that, but I think that would be a good place to start. And apologies, I have to jump off. So thanks, everyone.
That's okay. Thanks. And I just have to end the meeting right now, and everything will be fine. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marion. And good suggestion there, definitely. I know, you know, there's an introductory part that goes over that in the initial climate action plan. There will be sort of the same thing in the new climate action plan, as I understand it. That's the thinking now. And I know there has been some talk about that needing to be updated, even though it was done not that long ago. Things are changing. So Alice, go ahead.
I'm just going to third both of those suggestions. I dropped into a climate action plan full meeting or steering committee meeting, and there was an excellent presentation by someone at the State Hazard Mitigation program, and I highly recommend that this committee become familiar with it, because I was really impressed that the climate action plan was presenting this at their meeting. I'm sure it's up somewhere on their website, and I'll go looking for it, and maybe I'll just email the presentation out to members. But you know, those kind of things, and you can work with the Science and Data Committee to enhance this for us.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. And yeah, if you find that, that'd be great. Caroline, go ahead.
I think you know what I'm going to say. Definitely the state has a mitigation plan. I'm happy to do that presentation if needed. I think that's definitely a critical point. No one can go into this work without being extremely familiar with the state hazard mitigation plan and the prioritized projects within that plan and everything that went into it. So that might be a multi-day presentation even. So yes.
I know. We are definitely going to be looking at 2-hour meetings, I think. I know beyond that, it seems like a little bit too much to ask of people, but also 2 hours can go by quickly when we have a lot to cover, and a lot we want to make sure we understand as we move on with our actions. So that'd be great. Thank you for that offer.
And I think that like just the orientation of the climate action plan is looking more at local actions too. So we could talk a little bit about local hazard mitigation plans and how they fit in with the picture as well. So I think that might be a valuable point too.
Thanks. Anything else? Even beyond, you know, creating the work plan, but like who are people thinking we might need to hear from throughout this process beyond what we just talked about? Anything else come to mind?
If I could, I have no problem with people going ahead and identifying particular resources that we need now, but I don't want to use up our entire capacity because I want to hear the gap analysis. I want to see the update in terms of the climate plan actions before, and I want to hear, as Ben said, how has climate change changed in terms of its impact on Vermont?
Yep.
So I want to save, if you will, I want to save some capacity until after we've looked at the track record that was established as part of the first plan.
Yep, I would think also that anything that we put into the work plan is not going to be, you know, set in stone and can't vary from that at all. It's going to be an iterative process as we sort of go through go through the process itself. So, okay, I want to stop right now. And I don't know if we have anybody on from the public, but we need to provide the space for the public to weigh in. But I don't think I see anybody from the public. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Someone just wrote in the chat that they had some of that information that I had mentioned. Make sure that I'm sorry, your name flashed by on my screen. Make sure you get in touch with Andrea or Marion to make sure that we get you scheduled. It was
Okay.
Carolyn. Oh, okay. Yeah, Carolyn.
Okay. Okay. Well, so let me see if I can recap a few things. I wanted to remind people of, I think there's another onboarding session, I think on the 16th. So new members, if you haven't been able to get to that, you have to get to that. And then I would certainly recommend it for other members if they can make the time, just to kind of check back on how we're supposed to be operating. I'm going to try to make that as well.
Yeah, it was the one last week was my second, and it was not a waste of my time to sit through that.
Yeah, right. I think it's good for everybody to hear it again. And then I think if I heard it all right, then we did agree that it would be beneficial to have a framework, a work plan. And so I guess I would see at this point if there's a few people who would volunteer to put that together for our next meeting or before our next meeting, so people have a little time to digest it.
I have some time. I'm willing to work on it.
I'm sorry, Andrea, I got distracted. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there are people who are willing to put some time into developing the work plan. And there might not be a lot to fill out right now,
Yeah.
but just at least have a little think tank on that and see if there is something to add to that now, so that we can share it with the group in May. I'm happy to participate in that too. And it would be good to get at least one or two more people maybe on that.
I could participate also.
Okay, and we have quite a few members that were not able to make it today as well, so I can put a note out there to see if anybody's interested in helping out with that.
If I get dragged into other things, which sometimes happens, I'll be upfront and tell you, okay?
Yep. Yep, I know. I want to be
now,
mindful of that
open.
for everyone, because I know people are here because they're passionate about this, and those passionate people get spread thin. So I totally understand that. And then I have, oh, okay, that's just for next meeting. Trying to bring somebody in, maybe do some sort of an exercise on what we think the matrix update should look like, what things have changed. Hearing from Caroline on the state hazard mitigation plan and local hazard mitigation plans, reaching out to science and data. I can reach out to science and data and ask if they have somebody willing to come in and talk about climate change impacts to Vermont and how those are changing even from the last or the first iteration of the climate action plan. I'm not sure I have anything else. Oh, that matrix and the updates since the climate action plan would also include a little overview of funding to get to the question that you had, Alice. And then go ahead, Allie.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm putting most of my comments in the chat because I've got kids here in the background and it's a little noisy. But I did just thinking about that work plan, and I saw in the slides that there was a template that was going to be developed for how we can, I think it's for the new priority list. So I'm just kind of curious when that template will be available to us, because that also might help frame our work plan.
Yes. I don't know when that will be available, but I will check in on that. Yeah, I think it would be great if Dr. DePigny Giroux could come and speak to us, and she's on the science and data group, so I would imagine that's who they would have. Yeah, I'll check in on that template and see when whoever's developing it thinks they might have it. Is there anything else that we should talk about today in our last 2.5 minutes?
Madam Chair, it may not be necessary, but I would make a call for public comment.
Yeah, I mean, we did do, I did just do that a few minutes ago. I don't see anybody on from the public. But certainly offer that opportunity again, if there is anybody that I'm missing. So I don't see anybody.
Dahlia has her hand up. Excuse me, Andrea.
No, that's okay. Thanks. Dahlia, go ahead.
Yeah, this can be quick, and also this is kind of less related, but I'm just curious, like in relation to public comments, like how kind of publicized and open and like what, like how announced are these meetings to the public? Because I think like from my perspective, looking into these kinds of meetings, I think that it's super crucial that the impacted communities, like all impacted communities, can have a say in this process. So I'm just kind of curious, like how that process kind of goes about. And I know we don't have much time, so if this could be a separate conversation too as well.
No, I think it's a very good point. And I don't know, and I don't want to misspeak because I don't know. But I think it's like go to the website and see when the meetings are happening. And if you're interested in attending, then go ahead. Sorry, I was like, I lost you on the screen for a second. Where'd you go? So I don't know that there is more than that. And I think that's a good point. And I will relay that back to, I guess, to the Climate Action Office. It's a little difficult to figure out exactly who would be responsible for that or carry that. Maybe it's just for instance, I don't know. But thank you for the comment. Scott.
Yeah, just a quick comment on public opinion or public comment. Something we struggle with in City of Essex Junction. It's been a continuing ongoing discussion about how to get the public involved in public meetings. There is no immediate solution. We're struggling with this in terms of reaching out to stakeholders, and it's an ongoing discussion everywhere, I think. But one thing I plan to do is update the Planning Commission and other committees in the city on what happens in these subcommittee meetings. There will be an opportunity for us to publicize it locally. Probably also to a certain extent, whenever there's an announcement from the council or the subcommittee, it can be done through Front Porch Forum as well. So that's important. My other question was, real quickly, do you have a date for the next meeting?
No, and we have to talk about that. I had a little trouble with the poll and getting the results, truth be told. So I scheduled it on a Friday at, I did eventually get the results of the poll, and there was no time that certainly 18 people could meet, or it was convenient for 18 people. The most that we got at any time was 10 people, and Fridays kind of were around 9 or 10 people. I would like to try to stick to the second week of each month just to have something somewhat consistent. So for the people who are here, I guess you can certainly put in the chat what your preference is, but I do have those poll results, and I know it was a little bit hard to say, of the second week of any given month, what's your favorite time? Because schedules and calendars ebb and flow, but so I do have that information. And I can put it out. If Fridays do seem to work, then I think that often seems a little bit like a little bit of an easier day for a lot of people that I usually work with, but I'll put it out there to the group too, if that continues to work. We have, I don't know, would we have 12 people today? I don't think we can expect with people's busy schedules that we'll have everybody here every meeting. So I can also follow up with the poll results and make sure and just sort of see if that rings true. But I also don't want to overburden people. I kind of just want to not have to send out a poll every time we meet, you know. So if Fridays work, then maybe we'll just keep going with that. Sorry, I'm not being very clear on that.
Friday works for me.
Works for
Okay.
me.
Okay. Thanks, Ben, for your note there.
Yeah, Fridays work for me, but a little earlier is better. I don't know if we can move it up towards the morning.
I would say from the results, there was some opportunity for earlier on Friday to work. So I can look at that. I have a recurring meeting on Fridays, but I can also be flexible with that. So, okay.
So we're talking May 10th right now at some hour.
Okay. Sounds good. I don't know. I'm not looking at the calendar, but if that's the Friday, second week of May,
Second
then
Friday.
that works. Yep. Yep. Okay, and we'll get that out and we'll get an agenda going for that as early as possible so that we have ample time to review any documents that we put in there. And I will be in touch, Alice and Scott, and potentially others who might not be here right now, to have a little gathering next week or most likely the week after, to be honest, for that work plan. Okay.
You can invite me if you will, Andrea.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. I guess that's it. Have a great Friday. Do what you can with a rainy afternoon. Have a good one. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.